My name's Tom Ross-Seal. I'm here tonight on behalf of the residents of Powell Acres, and they have some concerns about the site. Powell Acres is probably the smallest subdivision in the town of Farragut. There are only 8 homes in that subdivision. If you've ever been back on Ida Hertzler Lane, it's somewhat of an idyllic, almost park-like setting, and the coming of a Costco or any sort of large development is going to have a major impact on the lives of these folks. And so I'd like to kind of go over some of the issues that they're concerned about. But I think in general, if you look at it, it's really 2 major issues. One is the impact on their property values, and the other is the basically the quality of life that they've had. Many of them have lived there for 30 to as many as 50 years. That subdivision was developed when it was part of the county in 1963, I believe, is when it was first looked at. And Costco has indicated in public statements that they want to be good neighbors. We would like them to be good neighbors, and the people in Powell Acres want to be good neighbors to Costco. And so we're looking to resolve some issues that they think are very important. We're also asking the town to uphold its part of the bargain that was made back in 1988 when Powell Acres became part of the town of Farragut. For the same reason that many of you are part of when the town of Farragut was incorporated, is because Knox County treated homeowners differently than the way we treat homeowners in the town of Farragut. And so they're looking to make sure those protections are actually there and enforced. So there are 4 major issues that we're going to talk about tonight. The first is traffic, and that has to do with the traffic light that I guess is going to be installed at the entrance on Kingston Pike, because that's the one that's closest to Ida Hertzler Lane. That's probably the best place to put it. It would be nice if it was in a slightly different place, but the folks are very concerned about being able to get in and out of their subdivision. It's going to be quite a bit of trouble to be able to get in and out. When the light is red, it's going to be difficult to make a left turn because traffic backs up. The people that have a green light coming out of Costco, it makes it very difficult for them to get out of their subdivision, even turn right because of the traffic. One of the things that we feel that the town needs to look at, and as Ralph and Ron are aware of, Alan Childress presented a presentation on the possibility of aligning Newport and Thornton Drive. And we would very much like to see that project proceed, because we think the addition of a second light in that vicinity will help slow down traffic, will make the traffic flow more in packets and make it easier for them to get in and out. So although nobody's going to be real happy with the amount of traffic that is going to be taking place there, and I think if you remember in the Sunday paper, I believe it was not this last Sunday but the Sunday before last, I think there are 3 intersections close proximity to the town are in the top 20 in terms of traffic. Certainly Kingston Pike and Lovell Road is a major traffic headache now. Having a Costco's means a lot more traffic, and that's a good thing. That means revenue for Costco, and it means tax revenue for the town of Farragut and Knox County. But managing that traffic is an important issue. The second item is drainage. What we're going to see in a little while is the residents that live in Powell Acres feel like they're living on the edge. They are already having problems with flooding coming up close to the edge of their properties, close to their homes. And it's not going to take much. Just an incremental amount could make a major difference in whether they're flooded or not. And so what we would like to ask Costco and the Shod Company to do is make some improvements in the drainage. One would be to enlarge the retention ponds that they have. I guess they're going to be underground retention ponds that are going to be on the order of about, I think, they're currently designed for a 100-year flood. We would like to see that enlarged to as much as a 200-year flood, because, again, incrementally, it won't take much to flood these people out. And, again, you'll see some pictures later on. The other one is there's a wet weather conveyance, which comes along the property line between the Shod property and the homeowners. And that is, I think, Ruth, I think there might be some others that show it a little bit better. The homeowners fully understand that the Shod property, the Costco development, will not be the major impact, but it could incrementally increase the amount of water that these folks see. We realize that there's a lot of water that comes from the other side of Kingston Pike from Knox County. It might be coming all the way from Concord Hills, something that Ed knows that as you go higher and higher up into Concord Hills, that water has to go someplace, and some of it goes down towards Kingston Pike and eventually across to that wet weather conveyance and into Turkey Creek. There's also water that's coming down from the grassy Valley Baptist Church that flows down from Lovell Road and Kingston Pike. Adding an additional lane probably increased the amount of water that's going through that wet weather conveyance. And so in cooperation with TDEC and the town of Farragut, we're asking Costco and the SHODs to make improvements in the drainage flow throughout that wet weather conveyance. We fully understand that there are certain limitations, but anything that can make an improvement would be most appreciated. One of the things that also has to be looked at is not just the quantity of water that goes through there, but there's a quality issue as well. And got to turn that to silent mode, Ed. All right. The other issue is quality, and as you well know, the town has certain requirements for the state and federal government to meet the NPDES, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. The biggest pollutant in the town of Farragut is sediment, and because of the problems with the bank that is along that wet weather conveyance, there's a lack of stability to the bank, and that needs to be improved, and we ask that this be done at the same time the development is taking place. We think that's a very reasonable request. The third issue is what we call visual and noise, and this has to do with the fact that this building is in very close proximity to the homeowners. The building is fairly close, and it also is going to be on top of fill and a retaining wall. As a matter of fact, when you add up the fill, the retaining wall, and the height of the building, it's basically the equivalent of a 5-story building. That's something that most people that live in residential areas don't expect to be practically right in their backyards. What we've asked the developers, Costco and the SHODs, to do, and I think they have tentatively agreed to do this, is to increase the landscaping in the buffer to provide more visual protection. In addition, they have indicated that they're willing to add some additional evergreen trees at the top of the wall. This will provide additional sound as well as visual protection for the homeowners. We also think there is something that the town can do. I think you're all familiar with the fact that this is C1 zoning, and under C1 zoning there is nothing that talks about height because the building's only 2.5 stories tall, and it meets the requirements. However, the town also has O13 and O15 zoning and C13 zoning. In each of those cases, the building is taller than 2.5 stories, and the requirement is that the building be set back at least 70 feet from the zoning line, in this case the B1 buffer, which is adjacent to the homeowners. And if Ruth could, if you could put that on the overhead where we have, I think, the zoning map, I think that would be helpful. That's shows the 100-foot B1 buffer. As it gets to the end of the subdivision, that's part of the 100-foot buffer around Turkey Creek, which also wraps around the bottom of Stonecrest, and then it goes to a 100-foot buffer, which is between Stonecrest and the Mercy Hospital, which is to the upper left of the picture that you're looking at. So what we're asking in this particular case is something that the town can do for us, and that is that we ask that you re-examine the ordinances that the town has for example, C1, that it just not include the height of the building, but it also include the amount of fill that has to be added and the retaining wall, so that if there is another situation, and we realize that it can't apply to this because it's after the fact, but there could be other conditions within the town in which residents would face the equivalent of a 4 or 5-story building where in fact it might be in a C1 zone or an O1 zone. And we think that is something that the town can do because the intent of those ordinances, why we have that 70-foot setback, is to protect homeowners from abnormally high, from their point of view, buildings. And this is what it looks like to them, whether it's dirt and fill and a wall, it still represents a structure that's the equivalent of 5 to 6 stories tall. The fourth item has to do with the buffer. Through no fault of Costco or the Shods, they began their plans with the assumption that that was a 50-foot B1 buffer. In fact, it is a 100-foot buffer, and that makes a major difference for the residents in Powell Acres. What the residents in Powell Acres are proposing is that you do a conditional approval of this site plan. Depending, the conditions would be several, one of them being that you would need to rezone that B1 buffer. They would be willing to give up 50 feet of a B1 buffer in exchange for the landscaping, the improvements to the drainage, both in terms of the wet weather conveyance as well as increasing the retention ponds, the underground storage, and the retaining wall is, I guess, a gabion wall, which is basically rocks in chicken wire baskets, and it's rather unattractive. And the homeowners would like to see an improvement. They have suggested a keystone, which we realize may be expensive, and this was coming very late. We just had a discussion out in the hallway with Costco and the Shods, and we realize that this is not an inexpensive request, but we are asking that they work together with the homeowners to try and find an accommodation to make this retaining wall more attractive. The homeowners will be able to see this, especially during the winter, and looking at that rock wall with chicken wire is not something that I would want to look at. I don't think it's something that anyone on this planning commission would want to look at. And so what we're asking for is some improvements, and already there have been some suggestions that the homeowners will have an opportunity to look at, and I will let the Chris or Annette talk about those, but there are options. So what the homeowners are basically saying is, we're not in any way trying to stop the development of Costco. We understand that it was an honest mistake, that that buffer is actually 100 foot rather than 50 foot. We're willing to give that up. Basically, it'll be 20 feet because there's going to be, 30 feet. There's a walking trail in there, and that would total be a 70. So to give up that 30 feet, to give up that 50 feet of the buffer, 30 feet of actual space, the homeowners would like some consideration to make their life a little bit easier, to be a little bit more pleasant, to protect their property values and to protect the quality of life that they have. I've given this as sort of an overview, but we have all the residents here from Powell Acres, and many of them are eager to talk to you about the issues they face, especially the drainage issues. And when you see the pictures, if you've never been in Powell Acres, I think you'll get a real strong impression as to why they believe these drainage issues are critical, because it won't take much to put them over the edge and flood them. And like I said, we understand that this is, any drainage coming from the Costco site is not going to be a major change, but any incremental change could make the difference between whether they stay dry or whether they're flooded. So I guess if I can ask some of the homeowners from Powell Acres to come over, we can give the pictures to Ruth. Yes?
That's specific. The thing that's on our agenda right now is the subdivision. We get to the site plan next.
I guess I thought you would call it the site plan. I'm sorry.
No, we're doing the re-subdivision.
Okay. I thought you'd approved the subdivision. I'm sorry, I was interrupted.
No, I was in the middle of starting to make a motion to do that.
Well, you got a preview. Now, I don't think you want me to repeat everything I said. But.
Great comments, but I think we got kind of the cart before the horse here a little bit.
Understand.
To do that in the context of the presentation of the site plan.
When I heard the approval, I thought you had finished the subdivision. So
we did the variance.
My apologies.
There are some things that Tom brought up that probably do tie in with the plat. And for instance, some of the drainage easements are being allocated on this.
That's the plat.
Well, on the subdivision plat that we're discussing as part of this agenda item. And so
We're
I guess
about the re-subdivision of the property lines, not the site plan.
Noah is correct. There is some drainage easements that are designated that may have to be modified if the detention, underground stormwater detention is modified.